Air France-KLM versus Lufthansa, a sustainability practice analysis. First on our agenda today is a brief introduction where we'll go over our goal as a team and introduce the two airline companies in consideration. After this, we'll break down the three sustainable practices that we consider to be most pertinent to investors. The first sustainable practice that we will go over is sustainable aviation fuel, which highlights both companies' use of biofuel. The next practice we'll go into is improving fuel efficiency through advancements in technology. Finally, we will take a look at the efforts that both companies have made in their carbon offsetting through their sustainability practices around the world. After this, we'll wrap up and have our team's concluding argument. Our goal for this presentation today is to provide evidence and reasoning as to which company, Air France-KLM or Lufthansa, has the best sustainability practices for potential investors. Ultimately, our team decided that KLM was the better of the two companies for investors interested in sustainable practices. This is because of their excellence in programs such as sustainable aviation fuels, fuel efficiency, and carbon offsetting. Now I'll pass it off to Maddie and she'll go over sustainable aviation fuel.
KLM's Sustainable Aviation Fuel Program is broken down to three major components. Their first component is their corporate biofuel program. This is the first ever corporate program related to sustainable aviation fuels within the airline industry. This resulted in partnerships with numerous companies and programs across Europe to help grow the use of sustainable aviation fuels in the industry. The second component of their program is their sustainable aviation fuel use. KLM is committed to purchasing 75,000 tons of sustainable aviation fuel annually. Since 2016, all KLM flights from LAX have used sustainable aviation fuels. The third component is their industry involvement. They support research projects and industry groups which help the research and development of sustainable aviation fuels. For example, they've been members of the Roundtable on Sustainable Biometrics since 2008 and were founding members of Sustainable Aviation Fuel Users Group. For Lufthansa's Sustainable Aviation Fuel Program, they have been using biofuels since 2011. They have since shifted their efforts to focus on second-generation biofuel, which are made from waste products instead of food products. Now, they're starting to support new research such as power-to-liquid fuel, which uses renewable electricity, carbon dioxide, and water to create a fuel that is more cost-effective than other sustainable aviation fuels. Overall, KLM has shown an increase of support for longer than Lufthansa and are more involved in the research and development of sustainable aviation fuels. And now I'm going to pass it off to Sophia to talk about fuel efficiency.
Thanks, Maddie. So with 99.7% of its greenhouse gas emissions attributable to flight operations, Air France-KLM is committed to reducing its fuel consumption in four key areas. And that's by 1, operating with a more fuel-efficient fleet, 2, implementing weight reduction measures, 3, optimizing flight routes, and 4, improving flight operations. So for KLM's first fuel-saving measure, the airline has pursued an accelerated fleet renewal and modernization program, where it's been able to phase out older, less efficient aircraft upwards of 2 years ahead of schedule. Secondly, Air France has worked to reduce the weight of its material on board, recognizing that an aircraft's weight is a key parameter in determining fuel efficiency. So for instance, this aircraft carrier has updated onboard materials, and that includes the introduction of new, lighter weight meal trays and trolleys. Third, Air France has leveraged artificial intelligence to develop more fuel-efficient procedures, and this has allowed captains to capitalize on favorable weather conditions and improve flight plan precision. Finally, Air France has forged a partnership with Open Airlines, which is a leading global fuel efficiency provider, and this enables Air France to analyze data from daily flight operations and identify fuel-saving best practices. As for Lufthansa Group, the airline has developed a 4-pillar model for climate change protection, and the 3 pillars that pertain to fuel efficiency improvements are outlined below. It's also important to note that this airline's practices closely parallel Air France's activities to improve fuel efficiency. So starting with its first fuel-saving measure, Lufthansa has also invested in a fleet renewal program. However, a key difference is that Lufthansa places greater emphasis on modifying its existing aircraft. An example of this is its recent exploration of shark skin, which is intended to decrease air resistance. Second, Lufthansa is highly involved in initiatives that aim to create a more efficient European airspace. And this is a key similarity between Lufthansa and Air France, as both airlines are proponents of the Single European Sky program. Finally, in this last year alone, Lufthansa has pursued 21 fuel saving projects to realize further fuel efficiency. And these include anything from weight reduction measures to improving flight route and airspeed optimization. At first glance, it might appear as though Lufthansa and Air France have almost identical approaches to implementing fuel efficiency improvements. However, one clear difference emerges when using metrics to measure the impact of these airline sustainable practices. One reliable and verifiable metric that our team looked at was the specific fuel consumption, which is measured according to the average amount of liters of kerosene required to transport one passenger 100 kilometers. So in 2019, Lufthansa's fleet consumption rose to 3.67 liters per 100 passenger kilometers, which is up 0.5% from the year prior. On the other hand, Air France's consumption fell to 3.17 liters per 100 passenger kilometers, which is down 1.3% from the year prior. So in regards to the sustainability practice, Air France's fuel efficiency improvements are objectively more effective than Lufthansa's. Now I'll pass it off to Jack, who will discuss the similarities and differences between these two airlines' carbon offset schemes.
Thanks, Sophia. So starting off with Lufthansa's carbon offset and sustainability practices, just metrics wise, since 2019, they have removed over 150,000 tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere as part of a broader program with other airlines, of which they represented over 90% of carbon offsets. And part of this is because of the certificate program they started in early 2019. It's basically a program where passengers will purchase their tickets and be given the option to buy offsetting certificates that go towards carbon offsetting programs around the world and other NGOs that support sustainability practices. And they balance 63% of all their flights emissions through this ticket program. And then Compensed is their actual sustainability program, similar to how NGOs work around the world, looking to provide more sustainable farming and reforestation efforts in rainforests. This is their own initiative, and they have been focused on reforestation in Nicaragua, and that has made a significant impact, especially given the fact that the developing nation doesn't exhibit many sustainability practices and is destroying much of their own natural rainforests and resources. And so this has done a very good job at making an effort around the world. And now moving on to KLM, they have also had a similar to the ticket program or certificate program that Lufthansa has, but they actually began it earlier. And also, in addition to this, they have offered CO2 calculators for customers to calculate how much CO2 they're creating by purchasing their ticket, as an effort to really show and expose passengers to their impacts in the world. And this has done a big job of making customers more aware of what they're doing and allowing them more and more of them to purchase these certificates. And they've made all domestic flights 100% carbon neutral through this program. And this has helped passengers to take action. They've also done more advertisements on becoming more sustainable and environmentally friendly. And they've done this through the Trip and Tree program and the CO2 Zero initiative. The CO2 Zero initiative in general has done a lot with reforestation, similar to what Lufthansa has done, but they've also done more in sustainable farming. And they have smaller initiatives within this that deal with reforestation and conservation efforts in rainforests around the world, working down to the ground level with individual farmers and villages and really encouraging sustainable growth. And that's why that I chose sustainability. The candidate I chose for sustainability was KLM. And now I'm going to pass it on to Eugene for our conclusion.
Okay, and after thorough investigation and our realization that the future of airline investment lies in sustainability, our team based our recommendation around the comparison of 3 prioritized sustainability practices: sustainable aviation fuels, fuel efficiency improvements, and carbon offsetting that would be the most efficient in reaching the IATA goal. While it was clear that both airlines have made tremendous efforts in their carbon emissions reduction strategies, KLM had more of a comprehensive approach to implementing and improving their strategies. For example, on top of the utilization and support for research of sustainable aviation fuels, they also implemented a corporate biofuel program, which was also the first of its kind. In addition to this, we saw the same comprehensive approach to other sustainable practices beyond just carbon emission reduction itself. For example, while both airlines focused on operational improvements, technological innovation, and infrastructure updates, KLM honed in on very specific ways they could make improvements, such as reduced cabin weight and accelerated fleet renewal. While there will obviously be some opportunity costs as Lufthansa also takes sustainable practices very seriously, due to the advantages explained beforehand, we would ultimately like to recommend KLM.